This video is brought to you by the Disc Golf Nerd Patreon support team. Go to patreon.com/discgolfnerd. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast. We are quarantined. We're going through all this together, but we got Andy, we got James. We figured we would just ramble, talk about some golf, and just kind of keep it light for you guys, give you guys something to listen to while you're hanging out in the house or doing chores or whatever you got to do. Hopefully everybody out there is safe and healthy. So far, so good for us. We are holding up fine. We have supplies, we have food, we have a roof over our head, trying to stay grateful for all that we do have and not focus too much on the doom and gloom, and just kind of hope that we can all get through this together. But we also don't really want to go too far into it. Everything's so much speculation that we could do, but I feel like I know for me personally, I'm kind of just sick of thinking about it, thinking of worrying about it. I just cursed, and I'll have to cut that out of the episode, but that's fine. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at with it. Just figured it'd be fun to kind of just talk about fun stuff, golf, discs, whatever else we got going on. And yeah, just get into it. So
your house isn't immaculate by the time this whole thing is over. What are you doing? Clean your house.
That is definitely fair. I've seen a lot of people are using the time to work on their disc storage, like dialing that in, you know, kind of going through which discs you kind of need, what you don't need, maybe building some PVC racks to put your plastic on. I think all that's kind of a good idea. I've been trying to come up with a video idea of things to do that are disc golf related that we can all do right now. So if you have any suggestions for that, let me know. I was kind of trying to put together a list of some stuff that people can do that is still disc golf related, but doesn't necessarily have to take place outside or out on the course.
Stuff that, I don't know. That's a good thing. Disc golf related stuff to do indoors while not on the, indoors.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the only reason why we might get stuck indoors. You know, we've actually had a pretty mild winter out here in Portland, but a lot of places in the country, people couldn't get out and play just because of the weather and everything else that's going on. So it's good to have that out there. You know, things that I've been thinking about, dyeing discs is a good one. Obviously, you need to have some supplies for that, but it seems like you could probably get some RIT dye delivered on Amazon. You might have to wait a little longer. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that. You could do a turmeric dye. If you have some turmeric and some vinegar in the house, you can play around with that. Organizing your discs is great. You can work on your throwing form with like a flight towel or just holding a small towel to kind of provide some resistance. You can work on your acceleration and your swing that way a little bit in the house. Obviously, you know, the most obvious answer is just kind of, you know, working out and working on your mobility and stretching and that kind of stuff, which I'm trying to stay up on for sure. You know, at least every day for a little while or every other day, you know, do a good half hour of stretching and squats and different things to try to keep my body going while I'm not out and about doing very much. And then of course, practice putting, which, you know, is something that you can do if you have a basket. James, do you have a basket at your place?
I do. I have 2 baskets actually.
Oh, okay.
What? Oh my God.
I know. I should have volunteered one of them. I actually have a portable one too, the Innova Disc Catcher Lite that Andy, I could probably get to you if you need it.
James is hoarding baskets. He's got toilet paper stacked on top of them.
Desperate times.
He's just throwing Lysol bottles into each basket. He's got all he needs. That's funny.
Seriously, I would kill for that basket right now.
Yeah, maybe y'all could hint to do a quick.
Well, we'd have to come within 6 feet contact, so I just figured I didn't want to risk it.
You grab the top of the basket, flip it up, hand me the bottom.
Right.
We don't have to make eye contact. It's great.
That's true. That's all you really need. So, it's kind of funny. I've been reflecting on this a lot over the last, you know, couple weeks here, is that just through kind of happenstance and the way it all kind of played out, I lost my job. You guys were both kind of out of work around the same time. Andy ended up losing your gig as well. And all this kind of took place right before all this happened. And just because we really didn't have anything else to do and the weather was conducive, we've been hitting the golf pretty hard. And I'm feeling really grateful for all the time we spent out there and all the courses we hit up over the last month. Because, I mean, even if just Andy was still working through that time or I was still working through that time, it would have cut those rounds down to a fraction of what we actually ended up getting out to play. We tried out all kinds of new courses. And you guys can check out a lot of the pictures and videos and stuff of all the different places we played on my Instagram. If you're interested, you just kind of scroll back a little bit. You'll see some of the fun moments that we had out there. Any of the courses really stand out for you guys? Like new tracks that we played, or any thoughts along those lines?
Meadow Ridge at Hornings. I had never played it. I've been here for 4 years, and that course is incredible.
Yeah, that one definitely stands out for me as one of the better ones that we played. Really phenomenal track. I really liked. It was like challenging and not easy by any means, but still doable even for my level. Like I still feel like if I throw the shots really well, I can still execute on a lot of those holes decently well. Like I really can't wait to get back there and try it again, because now that I kind of know the shots a little bit, I really want to get another crack at that course. That one was really phenomenal though, for sure. I really liked Wheatland. You know, I've been thinking about it. I feel like Wheatland was one of my favorite ones that we've played recently. Another course that me and Andy had not been to before. I really liked that track. It has a very different feel, a different vibe. Not as much elevation, but still really interesting, unique holes and varied terrain and stuff. I enjoyed that place a lot. That was a fun round.
Yeah, that course was great.
Yeah.
I think we did a good job with the courses we play. I mean, I'm gonna have to go the opposite way and play the one I hadn't played, which was Stub Stewart. You know, I think, I don't know, you play these courses and you get drawn to the Piers and the Milos and the Blue Lakes, which are all phenomenal. But then you have these sort of hidden gems that are just a little further out, like a Wheatland, like a Stub, like a Hornings, that are you can't access as easily. And so you have to commit a day. You know, when we were at Hornings, we were there for almost 8 hours. We played 2 courses. Same thing, Stub, we were out there for most of the day. So you don't get out there as often. I think maybe we appreciate those more. And maybe that's why they feel so special, is because you're not going to play that 50 times in a year. You're going to play it twice.
It's a little bit outside of the normal rotation. Yeah, so it's a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a little outside the typical radius, but yet there's still great disc golf to be had, specifically in this area. And I'm sure there's a lot of other metropolitan areas where if you just get off the beaten path a little bit further, there's some great courses to be played.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was funny, too, just so the viewers and listeners know, we played every hole on the property there. There's an 18-hole course, so we played one full round there. And then there's a little 9-hole course. You guys saw Andy picked up the ace that we caught on film that I posted on the channel here. So hopefully a lot of you saw that. Then what did we play that? 3 times?
Played it 3 times.
Well, yeah, we did 3 laps there. James and Andy both aced the same hole. We did not catch James's shot on camera. We did catch Andy's. I hit bucket 3 or 4 times, I think, but couldn't quite get anything to go in the chains. And then
you did let us down.
Yeah, I did. I totally ruined the whole day. And then there's also 3 like mini holes in the campground that are super, super fun for what they are. And we played those another 3 times. So we literally played every hole you could possibly play out there multiple times. And that was awesome. That was definitely a great day. And for anybody that's never been to Stub Stewart, you know, once this whole thing blows over, if you're in the area, I definitely recommend checking that place out. Even if it's just go there for a quick picnic and sit on that hillside. I mean, it's pretty awesome, regardless of the golf. But having a really sick wooded course alongside all the other amenities there, I think is pretty awesome. Also, a really popular mountain biking spot for sure. So yeah, we played. Where else did we play? We played Leverage Park, which is a.
What's that? Yeah, I had to open my UDisc just to go and look and see it. We've been making the rounds for sure.
I think it was like 12 different courses, including some of the ones that we played together. I think the only ones that we didn't play, the 3 of us, was I played Vance and Rockwood with a dude named Joel, who's actually one of my Patreons now. And I also played Rooster Rock like right before all the state parks got shut down. Like 2 days before that, I played Rooster Rock solo. And that was really nice to just get out. And I'm really glad we did that, especially after the park got closed right after that. So, yeah, a lot of different golf in there. Leverage Park is what, 15 holes or so, I think? I can't remember exactly.
Yep. The 15 hole.
We did 2 laps there.
Yeah, it's like 12 with a couple that are multiple tee pad.
Yeah,
that's right.
A couple of add-in holes there. I know the locals have all kinds of different safari routes and layouts that they play out there as well, because that place gets super packed on the weekends with local Vancouver people. So as one of the local courses there, they don't really have too many different options on that side of the river in that general vicinity, I guess. I would like to kind of venture out more into Washington and check out any other Washington courses coming up here soon. There's one that's up near Seattle that I hear is really sick on a former ball golf layout that they just put in like a permanent 18 on there. That's apparently really, really nice. You guys hear about that one at all? I forget what it's called.
No, but I've played Shelton Springs.
Okay.
Just supposedly the top-rated course in Washington.
Okay.
Yep. I see that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah.
Is it the Horseshoe Lake? Is it that one?
That might be it. That might be the one I'm thinking of. Yeah. Okay. Where do we go from here? Is there any other courses that we checked out we wanted to mention?
McCormick would have been the other one that we played.
Yeah.
Looking
Yeah.
at
McCormick.
Old disc.
Very interesting track. Tale of two rounds for me on big time on that one. That was hilarious. I don't think I've ever played two back-to-back rounds that were more different in my life. Not that I like shredded the second round, but after I played like one of the worst rounds I've played in probably 5 years at least. I think the worst round I've ever played, and I might try to get in touch with him to have him on the show. I was with DG Weekly, Anthony from DD. I just met him and we played Pier. It was Christmas several years ago before he took the job in Emporia, and it was like Christmas break, and he was in town here visiting family that he has in town. We played Pier Park, and I hit every tree. I don't even know. I was taking eights. It was unbelievable. It was like the worst round I've ever played in my life. I just spent like a month on the couch, holiday eating. It was a particularly nasty weather that year. And like I hadn't thrown a disc in like weeks, and we played, and I just played so bad. It was like the worst round I can ever remember on record. But that first round at McCormick was definitely up there for me as well. That was really bad. But I do like the track. It's an interesting course for sure. It has a weird vibe. It has like it kind of like, you could tell that it is a kind of a nice little forest area, and it was probably much nicer in the past. And now it's like kind of touched by humanity, but not like ruined, but definitely has that like feel of like, yeah, humans kind of put their mark on this place. Did you guys feel a similar vibe there?
Definitely on that front nine, I would say. It's just because it is meandering there through the park. You have picnic tables off a couple of the fairways on a couple holes. What is that, 2, I think? There, you kind of tee off from a picnic table on hole 1.
Sure.
But I think once you get after that first 6, the fairways were completely different. The trees were different. You kind of felt like you're back in the forest again. So yeah, it's probably a tale of 6 and then 12.
Right.
But definitely crossed over, and you have to wait a few times to let people pass and let the dogs walk through.
Sure.
It definitely is a park course, but yet feels very rustic in like a Milo sense that you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but it doesn't have that like pristine kind of wilderness vibe that you get at like Milo or like Stub or something, where you really just feel like you're in the forest kind of as it were, and there's just baskets there. You know what I mean? It definitely has a little bit more of a broken in kind of vibe to it. But I do like that course though. Good elevation, good mix of shots. I feel like it was a challenging layout, but somewhat, fair for the most part. All the lines were pretty hittable. There's no kind of real, throw it and just hope it goes through the trees kind of shots that I can recall. Some of the holes got a little bit tighter than others, but for the most part, definitely an executable course overall. I definitely enjoyed that layout. That was a fun one.
Yeah.
What did we miss? I mean, you guys did Pier without me. I kind of wish I would have tagged along for that now, but it doesn't really matter. And I did Rooster. We only really missed like Dabney in terms of our kind of quasi-normal rotation. I don't think we didn't play Dabney. Is there anywhere else we didn't actually hit up in that time? We hit up a lot of courses.
We did quite a few. I mean, right now, UDisc, which I haven't played in 4 or 5 days, but this right now says that we played 15 rounds in the last 30 days, probably 15 rounds in the last 25 days, and that's missing a bunch that we played right there at the end of February before things started to get a little bit crazy, because that was our stretch of Stub and Leverage and Hornings and Buxton. But yeah, after that, we got a Blue Lake, a Wheatland. We also played that quick 9-hole Memorial Park the way back up to Salem.
Yeah, that was fun.
We got Timber in. Andy and I have hit up Milo, 27 holes. Again, right before things got crazy here.
We did do the full 36 at Milo. That was pretty epic. I'm glad we got that timed out well for us to get that in. That was pretty sick.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, so just
Yeah,
feeling grateful for all of it, man. We got out on a lot of. I mean, it was like stunning weather for every one of those rounds too. Like there was not one round that we went out where it was like kind of questionable. It didn't seem. I feel like every one of them. Leverage, maybe it drizzled a little bit. I can't remember. Maybe one or two of those rounds it was a little bit drizzly, but some of them were just as beautiful as it gets. So, I've been sitting here, not to go doom and gloom, but there's no guarantees in life, and that's always the case, whether or not there's anything out of the ordinary going on. Like this could all end in a moment for any one of us, and we all know that. But I've just been sitting here like, you know what? If this is the end of whatever this is, like, I've had it pretty good compared to a lot of people. We've played a lot of golf in a really beautiful
wait. You're telling me there's a chance that I'm not going to be able to throw those surges I bought?
There is.
Andy just shelled out.
All right, so let's change. You brought it up. Let's change gears to some plastic talk. First of all, halfway, through the last couple hole, I think the last hole or so at McCormick, you got the email coming through that your beloved Surge has finally been run in the new ESP plastic. Funny part of this is right before that, we weren't sure if your wife was going to be able to leave Asia and get back into the country. And we're walking down the fairway and you looking at your phone, freaking out. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Like, is she stuck there? Is this like a month? This is going to be bad. You're like, oh my God, you're freaking out. And I immediately go to the negative, like, what horrible thing has befallen here? And then you're like, surges, ESP surges. And by the time we got into the car, 2 minutes later, I think you had ordered 4.
Yep.
Nice. They are really nice. So how many did you end up with total? You got another 2 or another 4?
8. I have 8 total.
8 total. Okay. Initial impressions on them so far. You guys can see them fly a little bit on that funny video I posted where they touched midair. You guys threw simultaneously. That was a pretty cool moment that we captured. And I think I have a little bit of other footage of them, maybe. We'll definitely put together a full review as soon as possible. And also, just in case anybody's wondering, I do have, I think, 3 or 4 more discs in the can ready for reviews over the next few weeks. So I should still be able to get those out since we took care of a lot of filming at Timber. But any initial thoughts on the stability, the feel? How are you liking them?
They are awesome. They are exactly what I wanted them to be. They fly like they have a nice smooth dome, not like a lot of dome, not board flat, somewhere in the middle. They look just sexy as hell. It's the new ESP plastic, so of course they look super good. Speaking of which, they feel amazing because of the new ESP plastic. And
they will continue to feel better and better over the next little while too, because that new ESP plastic breaks in super nice. It breaks in a little quick, I would say. Like we saw that with your new ESP Buzz that I dyed up for you. That thing broke in really fast. It's flying great and it feels really nice, but it broke in pretty quick. So we'll see. They might kind of get a little flippier, a little bit faster than some other plastics like Z and stuff, but it's totally worth it because the feel is so nice. And it's not like they're starting out understable. So I'm sure some of those, once they break in, are going to really get out there.
They are maybe a tick more stable on average than a brand new old ESP Surge.
Okay.
Like they flip the flat and then ride dead straight and then fade. And then it gets a little bit more stable depending on, I don't know if it's just the color or whatever, but they get, the red one I have is definitely more stable than the teal ones I have, which is more stable than the yellow.
Okay.
But I don't know if it's just the way they cool with the color or whatever. I don't know. But those yellow ones are going to be bombers.
Yeah,
they are going to go so far. So excited about them.
Yeah, the yellow one that had a little bit of flip to it was definitely better for my arm out of the ones that I threw, but I only threw them a couple times. James, what did you think about Surge? You haven't actually tested that disc before, correct?
I have not. Yeah, I was going to say I agree with what Andy's saying. As someone who doesn't typically add or buy a lot of new discs, it definitely is refreshing to kind of see what is out on the market these days. And I but the first disc I ever bought was a Pro Wraith, Pro or Star Wraith, but kind of in that same vein. So now whatever 7-8 years later, trying to play competitively, seeing what else is out there. I agree with Andy that slight dome, the plastic feels really good. I have been my own personal bag. I've been playing with. Do I need stuff that's a little more stable and more reliable? I tend to throw a pretty flippy bag, all things considered. I think there's just something dependable about that style of disc. And so, from the few that I threw, they feel really good. I might have to grab a few of those out of your bag and give them another test flight.
So that brings up an interesting topic that we discuss on the course occasionally. Just the complete total difference in the way you and I set up our bags.
True.
And how our bags are like just polar opposites of each other.
Yeah.
Not just like brands and plastic choice, whatever, but just the methodology in which
it's more like the philosophy of how you guys put together the bag and approach the whole thing is fundamentally different. And I would say I probably fall somewhere in between because I'm not afraid to add molds and stuff, where you, Andy, like you're like as militant as it gets in terms of adding and limiting molds. So yeah, it is interesting that you guys are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Let's just super quick, just like bag rundown, just so everybody knows what you guys are talking about, starting with Andy.
All right. I throw Surges, Undertakers, Buzzes, a Zone, and Lunas, and that's it. I carry 7 different.
That's crazy. You had a machete, and that got bumped for the ESP Glow Surge because that run came out really overstable. So that's plenty for that. And what else? Like I feel like you had a couple other things in over the years that kind of gotten bumped, but I can't remember. I mean, you're throwing Buzz SS. Are you throwing OS at this point or no?
No. I just Buzz SS. And then Surge and Surge SS are the only variations on those molds that I throw.
Right.
I have 7 Surges in the bag, including the Surge SS, 5 Undertakers, and 5 Buzzes, including 2 Buzz SS, 1 Zone, and 4 Lunas.
Yeah, and it's pretty rare that you throw anything. Like, you don't even really throw the Zone that often. You use it occasionally, but it's not super common that it comes out. You'll probably throw it a little bit more now that you don't have the ESP Luna in the bag, because that one was a little bit more beefy, I'd say. So I could see you maybe breaking out the Zone a little bit more if you want to throw a putter.
I've noticed that I have them.
You definitely have thrown the Zone more recently.
Yeah. So, once and for all, as a quick side note, Zone, mid-range or putter? Does it matter?
Putter.
What do you say? I say it's a putter. But, people like to classify it as a mid-range. I don't understand the whole, argument, I guess. I mean, it really makes absolutely no difference. But what do you think? What do you think, James? Would you say putter or mid for a Zone?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't held one until Andy was using it the other day, and I was surprised that he was throwing as much as he was. And so I think that was why. I've always considered it a putter. It definitely felt... Yeah, it seems like it's kind of in between. When I first picked it up, I felt like it was a mid, just maybe in the thickness, but I've always considered it a putter. Mm-hmm. But to me, it actually feels kind of like my Quake. So that throws like, oh, this feels somewhat similar and probably flies somewhat similarly as well.
Right.
Well, then that settles it. Our opinions are very much warranted and revered in the disc golf community.
Yes. I set the standard clearly. Okay, so James, let's talk about your bags. You have a very different philosophy. One thing I just mentioned on the channel yesterday is that you're still putting with your first ever putter, because I just reviewed yesterday. I did an indoor review of my first putter ever, which is an Innova Thumbtrack Birdie. You are still using the original DX XD that you got, which is pretty cool. And you have one more backup of that for practice and for throwing.
Yeah, so before James gets into this, I'm going to go take a nap, since this is going to take about 20 minutes to a half hour.
A pot of coffee, a quick nap. Okay, yeah, let's get into it.
Clean your house. That's what everyone else should be doing at the moment. This will be great. I'm still putting the very first disc I ever bought. I bought a Wraith, Stingray, and an XD putter. Those are the first 3 discs I walked out of the store with. I unfortunately have lost the Stingray,
It's a
but
pretty
I
awesome
still
starter
have.
set, to be honest. Like, if I was going to pick out, I mean, the Wraith is a little bit fast of a driver, a little bit fast and stable for a brand new player, but I
Yeah,
mean, the Stingray and the XD are like, yeah, really great starter discs, I'd say.
yep. So I still have the Wraith and I still have the XD, which I am still putting with to this day. It has nothing left on the disc, just scratches. You can't even. It's just kind of a white orb floating around. But it's amazing when people pick it up playing casual rounds that they know exactly what it is, even though there's nothing discernible about the disc anymore. And then I have a throwing XD because I can't risk my putting XD. So
Yeah.
I do have those two, and then I have a small stack sitting here at the house of backups, probably only 5 or 6 at this point since they're out of production. But hoping not to have to go into that stack if I don't need to.
Yeah. And then you
But
step it up
yeah,
to a Yeti for another throwing and approach putter, which
yeah. So my approach putters, I have a
pretty
Yeti
money
and a
with
Gator.
pretty money with
Yeah,
that thing.
stable
Did you
and
just call Gator a putter?
Yeah, wait, hold on now. Wait,
yeah.
hold the phone. Is a
Yeah,
Gator?
Gator is a mid,
I call a Gator a putter.
but a zone. Okay, I've
Well, that's what I'm
been
saying. I
playing.
consider a zone. I consider zone a putter, but it felt like a mid when I first picked it up. Whereas, like, I consider a Gator a putter, and when I first picked it up, it felt like a putter.
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't know how I
I
feel
don't know.
about
I'm
this.
thinking
I'm
Gators. I'm thinking
irrationally
Gators a
angry.
mid.
I'm
Is
not
Gator a
gonna
4-speed or a 5-speed? Obviously, we know the numbers are subjective, but I mean, if it's a 5, it's got to be a mid.
Let's
I
look.
don't think a Gator's a 5-speed, is it?
I don't think it is either. I want to say
I
it's a
think
4.
actually the Zone and the Gator are both 4-speed.
I was gonna say I think it's 4.
Which is-
There are different diameter though, which is definitely kind of a factor. You know, when you hold
Gator
the
is a
Zone,
5.
it's got a smaller diameter.
Gator's a
feel.
5, really.
Oh,
Gator is 5203.
Even a DX Gator.
That's what I'm looking at.
Oh,
wow.
dang it. Okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, it definitely, I'll say this, throwing them back to back, the Yeti and your Gator for sure go about the same distance. You know, there's not like
Yeah.
it's not like you're stepping it up to throw the Gator when you want it to go farther. That's definitely not
No.
a thing. Okay. So again, it gets back to how subjective all of this really is. It doesn't
Absolutely.
exactly matter. Obviously, you know, you're not going to say a destroyer is a mid range, but you know, when you're talking about some of the slower approach discs, it's kind of subjective. Okay, so you got the DX Gator in there, not very overstable. It's not like a meat hook by any means. Your DX
No.
Gator is pretty broken in, so it's like straight
I can
to
rip on it pretty
straight to
and,
fade.
yeah.
Right. Okay. Moving on from there.
Yeah. Then I would have my mids, and so have a range of those. So I have a Rock 3 is more stable. My sort of straight finisher is my MD3 from Discmania, and then I still have now a newer Stingray, which would be understable, and I also have a Truth and a Quake, which is my forehand approach mid. So I have 5 mids, 5 different molds,
Did you
a
say
lot of different.
Did you say the
manufacturers.
MD?
MD,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed
MD.
that. You were money with that
Yeah,
MD,
sorry.
by the way. That's I think all in all, you know, because I'm pretty well acquainted with both of your bags at this point, just because I pay attention to that sort of thing. It's pretty obvious what Andy's throwing. It's pretty easy to
Right.
tell for the most part.
Pretty
But
easy.
for you, I try to pay more attention. I would say overall, you throw a lot of really phenomenal shots with that MD. It really works well for your throwing style, and it's just a laser when you hit it on the right angle. It just flies so nice.
Yeah, definitely probably my more go-to mid-range disc. That and the Quake. I would
Especially
say,
since you lost the beautiful Sparkle DGN compass that I sent you out on the road with, like immediately.
No, I was literally just about to say that because Andy and I were talking about that the other day. That there were only a few times on tour. Usually, I'm not one that wants to. I will always try to get the plastic back. That one, I don't know what I was doing. I threw it into a lake. I spent at least an hour, if not 2 hours, treading water in a lake, trying to figure out if I could get a retriever down to the bottom of the lake while I was treading water and trying to retrieve that disc because that DGN compass had been money for the first half of the tour last year. So
You know, I actually think I have another identical one in my collector stock, a blue one. Like
Okay.
that. I think I stashed 2 of them in my compass collection because I have a collection of like all the different runs of the compass over the years. And yeah, I might have another one for you. If nothing else, I definitely have a really
This one
sweet,
needs another mold.
sparkly. Exactly.
yes, another mold for the bag.
Exactly, another mid-range mold. So, how many molds are we already up to? We're just up to mid ranges. Got 5 different mids. Yeti, Gator, and XD. So we're already up to 8 molds, and you're not even into drivers yet. That's already more than Andy has in his entire bag.
So, yep, that's true.
All right, well, let's get into the drivers then. Round it out.
Yeah, drivers. Let's start fairway driver. That's actually the one place where I've started to at least try to eliminate a few. I carry well, I guess I have my Cheetah, my DX Cheetah, understable fairway driver, and then right now I have 2 TLs. So I have a sort of a stable TL and an understable TL from a fairway driver perspective, and then I guess you could argue my Champ Roadrunner is kind of in that.
I'd say Roadrunner's a fairway.
Yeah, I end up throwing it off the tee quite a bit, but it would be in the sort of that slower speed driver category. So that's at least 3 different molds right there from my drivers.
Okay.
And then you get faster, and we did actually just tweak this in the last round that Andy and I played. So I am trying something out, but usually I carry 2 strikes, Destroyer, a Defender, a Raider, a Sheriff. I was trying to count in my hand, but I think that's 5. A Colossus.
I don't think I've ever seen you throw that, ever.
Colossus is a forehand disc.
Wait, you have a Colossus in the bag?
So it's my Defender. What's that?
Is that the... No, we found a Colossus that time at Timber, but I gave that back. I had no idea you had a Colossus in the bag. I didn't know that. That's funny.
That one has beat in, so it's actually my like Heiser flip forehand disc. But usually I tend to try to throw stable stuff. So Defender, I have Firebird in my bag too. That's Firebird, Defender, and Destroyers are my forehand discs. But Shrike has been my go-to backhand driver. And then just the other day at Milo, I am maybe starting to adopt some of Andy's approach. So I took out the Sheriff, my flippy Shrike, my roller Shrike, and the Colossus, and put in 3 different strikes.
The Defender out too.
And the Defender. Okay, yeah. So I did take a few out.
Wow. Okay.
Some of those are situational discs, but then I put in 4 strikes. And so we're going to see if maybe some strikes. That has been my go-to for a while. On tour, I had that white Shrike that I pretty much threw the entire year. It now has turned so flippy that if I release it almost on 12 and 6 Heiser, it will still come out and almost turn into a roller. So that one's got a little dangerous on tour. So I think I can take that out of the bag. And I moved on to that actually green Shrike that you gave me, Justin. And so that one has been pretty money for the second half of the tour season. And then I had 4 Shrikes sitting here at home, and so those have now made their way into the bag. And I might try a little bit of Andy's approach and see if that's the mold that I'm throwing and was throwing for 80% of the tour season.
Right.
Maybe I should try that mold with a few different stabilities.
Well, that brings me to the question is is there? I'm not familiar with the Shrike outside of I think I reviewed one, but I don't know what it was. It might have even been like a G-Star or something. I have no idea. I think I reviewed one though. But are there any runs that we're aware of that are different plastics that you could get a stable one? There's probably some overstable Shrikes out there somewhere. Being a high speed,
I was telling James
high speeds vary a lot like that, right?
Right.
I was telling James that the Infinite Discs, what was it?
The Pharaoh.
Pharaoh, that's it. I wanted to say Emperor, but no. The Pharaoh is the Shrike mold that they cool differently, so it molds up more overstable.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So
that's the kind of insider info you need if you're going to go Andy style. You got to really geek out on the plastics. That's how you make it work. I know that throughout the years we've seen, if you see a pro in the bag, a lot of times it'll be all-star destroyers, and then they have a really beefy one and flippy ones, and usually a lot of the pros work on wear. But for more amateur type players, I almost feel like plastic types are the better way to achieve different flights in there, because I don't know, it just seems to me like if you're relying on just the disc to be worn in different levels, and that's the way that you're getting the different flights, that's kind of tricky, because if you lose one, then it puts you in a tough position, where if you're for me, like with my Thrashers, I know the Z ones are my kind of stable workhorses, and then the Sparkle Z ones or the Protos are more overstable, and then the Big Z and the ESP are more understable. I feel like that's easier than if I just had 8 Z ones that were all broken into various stages in terms of like being able to repeat that process. Would you guys agree with that thought process?
Yes and no. I mean, when I was playing like all the time back in my early late 20s, I could get a stack of Z buzzes and beat them in relatively quickly. We're talking months and months and months, but I mean, there was a period of time where I had Z buzzes that were just flip machines. If I had my way, that's how I would go about it, with just all in wear.
Okay.
But in the absence of being able to play every single day, plastic is definitely an easy way to go about varying the stability of whatever mold you choose. And should you go my route?
Yeah, it's a good way to start it too. Like if you just started playing and you just discovered that a buzz works really well for you. Well, now, you're going to spend a year trying to beat up Z buzzes into different things when you could just be like, all right, I'll just get a Buzz SS, or, I can get this specific run that's a little bit more stable. I feel like that's a little bit easier for the average player who doesn't play a ton, or maybe you're just kind of starting out with this thought process to kind of get the benefits of layering molds, but also be able to kind of jump ahead, where you don't really have the time to do it with honest wear. I think that's one of the beautiful things about like DX rocks, and for years I was actually throwing DX or rather Pro D forces were in my bag, and I never saw anybody else throwing them, but it was so easy to get that layered system, because if I just bought a fresh one, it would start out really stable and I could throw it as hard as I want to, and within like a couple of good tree kicks they would start to vary a little bit, and it was so much easier to cycle them. But then it also, you have to change them out that much more often, where if you buy premium discs and you change the actual plastic type to vary the flight characteristics, it's a little bit easier to kind of keep that ball rolling and kind of jump ahead a little bit, which I think is definitely a benefit. So with those two kind of thought processes in mind, how did you go about setting up your bag when you first started playing, James? Was it just kind of trying stuff, and then if you liked it for a shot, you just put it in the bag without much other thought? Or was there like a deliberate process there, or was it just something that kind of happened the way it happened?
Yeah, I think honestly, there probably was not much thought into it. I think now, I was just going to say a minute ago, where I think one of the conversations we had while I was on the road was exactly that. One of the issues I ran into was the fact that I felt like I had my strikes and certain discs to the exact place that I needed them on tour. And, for the most part here around Portland, we don't have a ton of water or a ton of, maybe besides Blue Lake, rough, where you are never going to get your disc back.
Right.
And so the difference was on tour, Memorial, Ledgestone, I played a tournament in Texas that was all along a river. I lost a lot of discs very quickly. At Ledgestone, I lost 12 discs alone. When you have a bag the way I do, and every mold is so specifically tuned to a flight shot, then I struggled going into my backups, which then were different molds. And I didn't have something that I could just pull out and replace that shot. I had to immediately go hit a field up, see how things were flying. And so it definitely, even this year, probably last year, my bag on tour rotated 3 or 4 times. And it wasn't until the back half of tour, when I got to MVP and Green Mountain, where there isn't a lot of water, that my bag finally stabilized, because I wasn't losing discs every single week. Yeah. So that's definitely the fallacy with my approach. I definitely struggled with it this year. I think I've been thinking more about adopting probably more of Andy's approach. And I think, the way it came about was somewhat happenstance. I walked into when I was in Iowa, my brother-in-law got me into disc golf, and so he gave me some recommendations. But we went into a disc golf store, no idea. I picked bright colored discs, 2 yellows and a white, and that's kind of how it started. And then realistically, my collection out there exists because when I decided to start playing competitively, I ended up getting a lot in script money, and I couldn't quite figure out. I figured at that time, since I didn't have a large collection of discs, if I already had, say, 5 destroyers, I didn't know if the tourney stamp discs were going to fly the same way. I didn't quite know what I was going to get, and so already having a few destroyers in my collection, I figured, why not try something a little beefier? So, you get an ape, or you get something, you go down a little bit, and maybe get something a little less stable. And so, that's where I started to get to Sidewinders and Roadrunners, and maybe a little less speed. I had a Beast I got from some term, so I just started to accumulate a variety of discs so that during field work, I could test things out. I think now that I am taking competition a lot more seriously, and the desire to have discs fly a very specific way, I think now I've probably moved a little bit more. I've moved away from just willy-nilly picking a disc out of your collection and just seeing how it fits on the course. I think there's a lot more thought into how I approach a course, how I want to score the best. And so I think that in turn is making me think about my bag differently.
Right. That's definitely fair. I will also just, let everybody know, just by a caveat, me and Andy did not beat you any times. Like, not one time did we outplay you like significantly during any of the rounds that we played.
Hey,
Andy, I was gonna say that is not true. Andy beat me.
When did he get you at Milo?
You got me at Pier, didn't you?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he beat
me tied more than a few times.
Beat me by he definitely gave me a couple times where we tied.
Okay.
At like 4 down. And then he could have won, but he missed a couple putts on 18, like back-to-back rounds.
You're kidding.
Okay.
What's that?
No way you're kidding. Andy missed a whole bunch of putts.
Yeah, but then there was a day where you beat me clean by a stroke or two. So I would say yes, usually.
But just throwing it out there, like what I'm getting at is, even though you're using a bag system that's not necessarily the best, most ideal professional style, you're definitely making it work in a very functional way, and taking away the things like losing discs. It's definitely a functional setup. But yeah, I guess you definitely kind of, I don't want to say learn the hard way, although I guess that's apt, getting out there on the road and seeing like, oh, maybe that's why, they have less molds and so many more backups and stuff, is because of losing discs, and also the wear and tear of playing that many competitive rounds, practice rounds as well. That's the other thing. Like, my bag takes forever to break in because I don't play that much. I don't throw with that much speed. And luckily, I don't smash first available tree too often. I'm pretty good at missing the first few trees where it's going to hit with the most speed, I guess. But, for me, I have discs in my bag that I've been throwing for years that I truly don't feel like have broken in that much, if at all. But when you're out there on the road, you're playing competitively, you're throwing with more speed than I do, and you're playing all these practice rounds and stuff. It just puts that much more wear and tear on your discs. And then even if you had the disc dialed in exactly where you want it, one nasty round where you hit 3-4 trees with it, and now all of a sudden you're kind of scrambling to fill that hole,
Yeah. I think your I think, and the situation we're all in now, I'm obviously not on tour this year. Well, no one's on tour at the moment, but I think that's the reason that system works out. Again, that Shrike, my white one, had been tried and true for years, and it's because I was mostly playing competitively here in the Portland area, which when I was working full time was 2 days a week,
right?
Maybe 3 days if I get out after work. Last year I quit my job specifically to go on tour. I was playing 7 days a week, 4 to 8 hours a day at least. The discs were getting a lot more wear, and so the fact that disc went from a really great hyzer flip, sort of stable to hyzer flip disc, to literally can't do anything except roll, is because of that exact phenomenon. I think the other thing too, with the bigger pros in particular, I remember playing with Simon. I think actually it was at BSF, but he finishes a round, he'll sign his discs that are in his bag and give them to fans. You can do that if you have the same molds and you can go break something in and you're going to work on something and your bag just rotates. If I were popular enough to have anyone wanting my autograph, I couldn't risk giving up a single disc in my bag. That just wouldn't be possible. So
Yeah,
I
we've
think
seen
there's
Simon give away his whole bag
his whole bag,
out of
exactly.
frustration and stuff. For me, I'm kind of somewhere in between you guys. As you were talking about that, I was thinking about it like there is maybe one disc in my bag right now, and it's just because it's relatively new to my bag that I don't have a direct backup for that could go straight in and replace it, and that's the Culverin. Just because I kind of just put that one back in the bag after I bagged one when I first reviewed it for a while, and I dig it, and I ended up stopped throwing it for stupid reasons and put it back in. It's working really well, but other than that disc, which I don't have a direct backup for, I pretty much have something I can put in on any given day that will directly replace anything else in my bag. My ESP Thrasher is definitely more flippy, the one I carry, than any of the other ones that I have. But that's pretty much it. Everything else has something in there that I can kind of take out of my crate and throw it in the bag and make it work without too much trouble. But that being said, I still have more molds than Andy, but not nearly as many as you, James. So
Yeah.
it's definitely interesting. And there's so many different ways to go about it. You know, we've seen guys like Ron Converse, who has 8 trillion molds. I mean, he throws one of every disc the trilogy makes, it seems like. And then you have the complete end of the spectrum.
The bag that he had was just...
Yeah.
In the bag that he had made me irrationally angry.
Right. And then you can go all the way to the other end, which is like Nate Doss's bag, which is basically the same as yours, Andy, where it's like a few molds and stuff he's been throwing for a million years and all that kind of stuff. And there's so many different nuances in between.
I definitely follow the Nate and Philo, like keep it as simple as humanly possible.
Yeah, that's true.
That way I don't there's never a time where I don't know exactly what disc I'm going to throw. I can step up to a lie and never be between discs. I know. Okay, this one, it's this.
I think occasionally I've seen you occasionally consider Luna or Zone for a couple of times. Like I've seen that kind of thought process, like, oh, maybe can I reach this with a Luna? Because you're basically trying to throw Luna whenever possible, it seems, which is fair. And then, but other than that, yeah, you pretty much always know what you're going to throw. You're not like on the T-pad with 3 different discs and dropping 2 of them and then throwing. You know, that's never really a thing.
With Andy's bag, I think it's in particular. Maybe it's because we've been playing Milo recently, but it's what is that whole on the west side of 1, 2. It'd be 4 west. So the shortest wooded course, shortest wooded up on the ridge there, the 175 footer. So the last couple of times, you know, it's the hole that Andy always Babe Ruths. You got to call it. You're trying to ace it. It's just right ahead of you. Yes, it's wooded, but it's only 200 feet. And it's been funny because every time he's like, I don't know why I'm not parking this. You know, hit a tree early. You'll kick one of those trees and go down the hill. And in my mind, you know, from my bag perspective, we always throw 3 shots there. And Andy always has 3 Lunas. So 3 relatively stable putter shots. There's literally only one line he can take on that shot. Whereas I step up, I pull the 3 putters out of my bag. I throw my Yeti dead at it. I throw my XD on a sort of a slow Anheuser, I'd say Heiser flip off to the left side, and then I throw my Gator and I try to hit a line on the right side and I try to drag it in. And so, you know, right now between the 2 of us, it seems like I've had more success. I feel like I've been birding that nonstop. And yes, there's a little more indecision off the tee, but I can, you know, if like that hole in particular has that bunch of trees come down, so the line has actually changed a little bit because I have 3 different molds. I have 3 different line choices. You need to execute whichever one you pick. Whereas Andy, yes, he only has 1 line to choose, but I sometimes think there's a better line to throw, but he's being forced into that line based off his disc.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought about that.
That's an interesting point. I never really thought about it that way.
That's what I was trying to say the other day, because I was like, I think if you threw, again, we'll just use Yeti, because if you threw something that was 0-0, I think you're birding that hole every time like I am. I think the fact that, like, I wouldn't take your line with the Gator. I hang it out further to the right because that is such a tight gap to hit with a stable putter. Like, that scares me. Whereas you throw the Yeti through that, I'm releasing it flat. It's not even going to move an inch off that line. And worst case scenario, if I turn it if it turns over, it's going away from that cliff. Whereas yours, if you miss your line and have it slightly off angle, yours is trending right towards the cliff. And so again, you have to take that line with that disc. I don't agree. I completely agree with the line you're taking, but to me, you're bringing unnecessary risk in. Whereas in my bag, I'm like, ooh, shoot, is this straight at it, or is it the hyzer flip to really make sure I stay away from the cliff? Usually it's between those two discs.
Interesting. Yeah, that is definitely a valid point where, to a degree, limiting the different number of molds you have somewhat limits the options and the nuances in between different shots and different shapes that you can achieve. But there is definitely a point of diminishing returns where now if you go too far beyond one way to the or the other, you can also go to the other side where now you have too many options and you're standing there on the tee going, what do I do? It might be better. A lot of the times it's probably more consistent to know exactly what your approach is when you're stepping up. But it is also good, depending on conditions as well. If there could be a wind or something else that's going to change what you might want to throw on a given shot, and it's good to have options. So yeah, there's a lot of different aspects to it, and it's definitely an interesting philosophical discussion. I do think that the average player the average amateur probably has more molds than they need, I would say, for sure. And
I agree.
You know what I was thinking too on this whole topic, and I agree. The average amateur probably has more molds than they need, but look at the time that I picked up the game versus the time James picked up the game.
Absolutely.
That's totally true. We're about 5 years apart, and there were in those. James, you picked up in 2011.
Yeah, probably somewhere, maybe a little later than that, but yeah, somewhere in there.
Wow. So the options that you had were way more vast than the options that I had when I started playing. And I feel like back in my day, back in the 2000 early aughts, it was definitely more of a focus on doing the cycling and layering. Like I know I picked up that whole idea from people throwing rocks.
Yeah.
And that's where I got it from. And all of the old, not that there were a ton of in the bags back then, but you would see so let's move on to mid-range. I'm throwing the rock. I've got 5 different rocks. They all from overstable to understable, and you had options, but it seemed like the emphasis was to have a lot of the same and build your bag the way that I've built my bag, as opposed to, I see people posting their bags on Reddit and whatever Facebook stuff. And I'm just like, what the hell? Why do you need a Mantis and a Heat? And an Undertaker and a Vulture? You don't. What are you doing?
Yeah. That's interesting too, because if you go way back to the absolute origin of the sport, you only had one disc to choose from. Right. And Scott Stokely told me that in the early days they used to carry 3, 4, 5 of the same exact disc, only because 1 or 2 throws, if you hit a tree, it could shatter. Legitimately, their discs were breaking all the time in those days. Or B, if you hit a tree firm, it might completely change the flight of that disc, and now you have to switch to a fresh one just to get it to fly right. So all the way fast forward to now, when I was first getting into the game, which was 2006 or so, you had a Firebird, you had a Predator. That was kind of like the coin toss between the two. You didn't have the Pioneer, the Felon, the Invictus, the Legacy Fighter. The list goes on and on and on of all the different types of discs that are basically a Firebird or very similar to that. And how do you narrow that down? And the market, in my opinion, is well oversaturated. You've saw DD and Latitude make announcements about cutting a lot of different molds from their lineup. I really feel like Innova could benefit from that. They've got so many different discs that nobody needs a lot of these discs. They're just so many different things that just are overlapping or just unnecessary, and there's so many different things to that. If you're a brand new player starting this year, think about how many more options and different things you need to dial in and that you need to figure out what you like based on the amount of options. I mean, just go click around on Infinite or Sun King or any of the websites, and like it's ungodly how many different options there are now. When you take into account weights and, like we talked about earlier, plastic type, narrow that down, it's a really tough thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why my channel has been good for newer players, is that they have the ability to look into and learn more about these discs and get my opinions on them. And then sometimes, like, I feel like people just want me to tell them what to throw. You know, I get questions from people and I feel like they just want me to be like, yo, just throw this. You know, like,
Right.
here, pick this one and don't even look at these other ones, because there's so many to choose from. It really does change
It can be
everything.
so super overwhelming.
Yeah. Back in the day, you had to have a fresh rock in the bag because that was your stable mid range, and then you had broken in ones to have a flippy mid range rather than switch to a Stingray or something. It was just that much more simple, you know, to do it that way. And now, a lot of pros still adopt that thought process. We know, obviously, like we talked about, Andy does the same thing, and but that was kind of something that you almost had to do in those days to get those variations, you know, especially because there used to not be very many different options in terms of runs and plastic and all that stuff either. You know, I was reviewing my birdie yesterday and I noticed it doesn't even say DX on it, because I don't even think they had a name for that plastic in those days. I think that was just what it was. Maybe they did, and I don't know, but I'm not even sure.
06, like 06, I remember this specifically. You had, I mean, there was still, Gateway was still around. Well, I guess they're still around. Gateway was around, but barely. It was like just Wizards.
Right.
But you had DX, Pro, Champ. And then on the disc golf side, you had DXZ. And then ESPN Star came out at about the same time.
Yeah.
But you look at it now, like Titanium, G-Star, Luster, you know, all of the same plastic that's across the Trilogy family that's all named differently.
Yeah.
Like, I still get confused
97
by
different
that.
types of plastic from Prodigy that I can't quite figure out.
Right. It's just, it's truly overwhelming.
It really is. It really is. And in a lot of ways, it's probably a negative. It's probably hampering some players, where if they had a little bit less options, maybe they pay a lot more attention to how they're throwing the disc and less to what you're throwing. That's the other thing that goes into all of this stuff, is like, when you have a much simpler bag, you're paying more attention to what you're doing with the disc, rather than this kind of mentality of, oh, I just throw everything on a slight hyzer and then I change the stability to get to different flights. Well, maybe you'd be better off and you'd be a more skilled player to know those angles more. You know, it opens up so many more options when you know how to throw the different angles. So maybe I think it's pretty fair to say there's probably a little bit too much emphasis on what and not how. You know, what do you put in your bag, but not necessarily how you throw it, and like your ability to manipulate it and control it on different angles. And that is one of the nice things about simplifying your bag and making concerted effort to do that, is that it forces you sometimes to work on controlling those angles more on your own, rather than relying on the disc to have that inherent characteristic that you know you can count on to do that one thing. You know, so it definitely helps you kind of figure out how to throw on more angles. And just being honest, that's one of the things we talk about with you, James, is that you throw such flippy plastic, and you're so good at it too, but it has kind of prevented you from really dialing in strong Anheuser releases. That's not something that you're really that good at, because you're so good at being able to throw a disc even on a hyzer and get it to hold a turnover better than me trying to throw something on Anheuser sometimes. And you've worked that in really well. But then again, if you lose that disc or anything, you know, the wind picks up in a different way, it can kind of cause some issues there, you know? So maybe it probably would be better to kind of focus more on throwing more neutral stuff. That's kind of what I've tried to get to over the last couple of years, is figure out what are my kind of more neutral options, rather than throwing my super flippy magnets and having to start them all on hyzer all the time. I've been really enjoying just kind of throwing the link and just pulling it flat across my chest and letting it just fly. You know, it's kind of nice to do that.
I mean, that's the other another part of it too, is like, when we go to the course, I don't have to even think about my bag. I just pick it up and I'm good. I have everything in there for every single course.
Right.
I don't have to change. I don't have to go, okay, this comes out, this comes out, this goes in, this goes in.
Sure.
Like there's none of that. It's just grab my bag and go.
Yeah, that is another massive difference between me and both of you guys, is that you guys just bag goes in the car and we're good. I'm like,
I don't ever change my bag. Realistically,
I change my bag pretty much every round, to some degree. Now, a lot of that was born out of the fact that I needed to make room to sneak in 3-4 different review discs because we're going out filming, or I need to be able to fit this thing that I'm testing for a review or whatever. And I've been doing that for several years now, of course. So I need to make some concessions. You know, if my bag was just packed full all the time, there's no room for that other stuff. But, you know, for me, I tailor it based on where I'm going, just because I know my game changes based on different courses. You know, switch it up a little bit based on that. I know that there definitely are players that do that, and then a lot of players that just have their bag set and pick it up and go. And I definitely think there are some benefits to both. You know, when we're playing a short course, I'm not carrying anything I don't need to have with me, which is kind of nice to have a little bit less on me. You know, my bag always weighs less than both of your bags, for sure.
Yep.
But that's pretty easy when it's a trooper and with one water bottle, and you guys are carrying a grip and a Latitude, E3 or luxury or whatever it is for you.
Yeah, whatever that was. Yeah.
Speaking of in the bags, we will probably report to you guys with full in the bags for all three of us sometime during this whole situation. I feel like that would probably be a pretty smart thing to do. Just get keep the content rolling for you guys. Hopefully you're enjoying any of the little things I can do to try to post stuff during this time. And it seems like the disc golf community is definitely stepping up and still providing some content. You know, Simon's been active. Drew's been making stuff now. He's got a camera and he's trying to really dig in on that. We've seen Eagle return to posting some stuff. Brody's posting fun stuff to watch and all that kind of stuff. So that's cool. And hopefully they can figure out and continue that kind of thing. And I also noticed that some of our pros are taking the time to make instructional content. And I think that's huge. I really like that. Like Eagle posted a full forehand video today. I have not had a chance to watch yet, but I'm excited to see that. And I think that'll be a good thing that could come out of this, is that we could take this time for all of us to kind of learn and grow a little bit, you know, take some deep breaths, rest a little bit. And, it's kind of been nice to take a little bit of a break of the day-to-day grind and just kind of think about life a little bit, you know, take some time to learn some different things. And that would definitely be cool to see more of our top players putting out that type of content going forward. Anything that you guys are kind of going back and watching, any recommendations for entertainment-based recommendations for everybody listening, whether it's disc golf related or not?
I mean, I've been going back and watching, like, I just let the YouTube take me down whatever hole. So I'll just put on, you know, whatever, like the skins match from Jomez, and then just let it run its course.
Yeah,
and
that works.
So it's taken me. I seem to get the disc golf world tour at La Mirada a lot, and I get a lot of
today too.
I get a lot of GBO
Strange.
as well, but
you know what? I feel like the same thing. Like when because I'm one of those people that I will put on Jomez to go to bed sometimes because I find it like relatively soothing to listen to. And, I do. I feel like I'll wake up and it'll be like the same event again. It's like, why am I watching like 2016 Idlewild, or, you know, like, why does this keep coming up, or whatever it is? I forget what it is, but yeah, that's strange how there's those like algorithm patterns that happen.
I seem to get a lot of live as opposed to post-produce too.
Interesting.
Like it'll default to the live stream, and which is great because, you know, during the day I'm doing whatever I'm doing. I just have that on in the background, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember this tournament, and I'll just watch that live round because whatever.
Yeah. Might as well, right?
Yeah, it's 4 hours of time to kill.
Yeah.
Right.
I had just recently went back, I think before any of this quarantine stuff happened, I had just went back and watched some old McFly videos. McFly So High. Shout out to him, man. He's one of the forgotten, I don't know, whatever you want to say. He's like the godfather, the originator of like American high quality coverage. Like he was the first one to really commit to like filming all the big events with really good. He was shooting in 4K before anybody else was shooting in really good quality. And I still really like his style in a lot of ways, you know. And I went back and watched, what was it, 2015 Memorial when Jerm and Paul went to the playoff. It came down to the last hole and then ended up going to the playoff. That one was a good watch. And going back and watching some of that old stuff is pretty fun. James, you were saying you were watching some 14 Worlds. You've been watching some of that?
Yeah, I'm watching 14 Worlds. I think part of it is just because we made such a nice little circuit over the last month before we knew this quarantine was coming. You know, I think it's fun to see what Worlds, you know, what would Worlds be like again in Portland? You know, like we just discussed earlier.
Yeah.
The caliber of courses that are here, and it's always fun to watch people play Milo and Blue Lake. But you know, Andy and I talked about playing Trojan. That's another course I've never played at. So watching the pros, you know, especially on the courses that may be your local course or your home course, and just watching how they approach it, I think there's always something to learn there. So I always like to go back to events, especially when we've recently played there, and see how you compare to somebody even 4 or 5 years ago, and how they attack the course, so, and how things have changed. You know, the fact that a few of the holes at Milo are different nowadays, probably some good changes. So yeah, I've been enjoying some of that older coverage, just seeing where we've come from and stuff that I probably didn't watch because I wasn't as involved with the game as I am nowadays.
Right. Yeah, I was there. I was there for 14 Worlds. I was there for I think round 2 or 3 at Milo. I watched Ricky and hit whatever the rest of his card was. I think it was lead card. At the time, it was like him and Nico and I forget who else was on. Yeah, maybe something like that.
Rinster and Jenkins, Avery, I think.
I caddied at Blue Lake for FPO that morning. My buddy Zach was, I think he still is. He's part of this like caddying thing where they assign caddies to people. Yeah, he got assigned to caddy, right? And we were going to start the round, and he was caddying for Paige Bierkes. And then I was just there, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot be like the lone, you know, solo guy gallery for this FPO card. Like, this is not going to be, I'm not going to be like the by myself gallery, just gawking at all these shots by myself. So like, thank God we're walking up hole 1, and I went up to the one woman named Stacy who did not have a caddy. I was like, you need somebody to carry your bag? Like, my buddy's caddying over here. Like, this would be so awkward if I'm just here watching you guys. Like, you need, and she's like, yeah, absolutely. And we had a blast. Like, that was one of my favorite moments, actually. Like, we talked about shots, and I carried the bag, and you know, I had a really good time. Anyway, so that was a good day. And then I was there for a lot of the Blue Lake later rounds. You know, I was there for the whole final day, the semifinals, and then the final 9 and the whole playoff. And man, what an event that was. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, there's a lot of good things to watch for sure. That's definitely one of the good things I've been also thinking about in terms of all this. Like, could you guys imagine if this was like 1997 right now, where you had like network TV and that's it, no internet, like
right.
no nothing. Like, oh my God! At least we have like this endless stream of things you can learn and see and do, and like all kinds of stuff like that. So that's always good. You know, this could be a lot worse at a different time period where you have nothing but like news to watch and then, you know, playing Monopoly and stuff.
Absolutely. I thought I saw that Ivy League is giving free online classes at the moment. So if you're like interested in something, they have like 500 classes available at all the different Ivy League schools.
That's really cool.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Nike, or well, Jenica just told me about it. So like, there's plenty of entertainment, but then again, even the age of the internet, like if you want to go and learn right now and take a class from an Ivy League professor because they're online anyway, you have the opportunity to do that. Yeah. So yeah, there's a ton of cool stuff out there right now.
Absolutely. Definitely some positives to look at, and we will end it on that. We've gone pretty long, actually, over an hour already. Any parting shots you guys have? Anything else you want to touch on? We can definitely come back and do some more episodes coming up here soon if we have any other topics. I mean, just talking about bags pretty much got us through an hour. So
yeah, you might be able to splice that into too. I mean, I think a couple of those topics I'm trying to remember just so I don't forget. I think, like you said, where is disc golf going? Because what I was going to say somewhat earlier was specifically related to the bags. I think the choice is a negative on the micro scale from a player perspective, but I think it's good on the macro scale because everyone has a Firebird, 5 different companies, but that's why Innova and Discraft and Latitude 64, they all have a sponsored player on tour. Right. So there's 4 or 5 discs that are the same, but now we have 4 or 5 companies that can sponsor a player, and you get the Touring Pro. So I think some conversation. I'm just saying this so we don't forget, so it's on record, but some conversation of where have we come from in the case of 2014 now, and where are we going, and then maybe pros and cons. What do you want to see happen? What don't you want to see happen? Incorporate Andy's question of should disc golf move to pay to play? Does that change the game?
Yeah, absolutely.
We had something. Talk about that. Yeah, we had something at Idlewild, which we didn't, but especially, and I don't know if they're, again, we have only seen one Pro Tour event, but one thing that Steve Dodge was working on was essentially at these events, how can we make more money to make the Pro Tour more viable? And so they were setting up specifically on the wooded courses a VIP pass. And so you didn't get to go onto the wooded courses unless you paid for the VIP pass.
Yeah.
And so the only interesting was then myself and a couple other guys that played in the tournament, we wanted to then go watch lead card after we finished, and we were not allowed to go because we didn't have the pass.
Wow.
And so one of my buddies got into a big argument because he's like, I literally just played in the tournament. You're telling me I can't walk? And he's like, well, you don't have a bat, so...
The tournament wasn't free either. It's not like you just show up and play.
Yeah, exactly. So, where does the sport go? How do we get there? I think there's a lot, and whether pay to play or pay to watch, we're seeing that with the Disc Golf Network. I think there's a lot of content that we could probably discuss in that arena.
Yeah, and going back to what you said, that's definitely a good point, is that, back in the day, if you were a rock thrower, but you were sponsored by somebody else, you're just kind of out of luck. But now, if you're really love the Firebird, but you get offered a sponsorship with like DD or something, you have options. You have a disc that's basically very similar. Almost any of the major manufacturers, you have something that's going to be pretty close. So you have a little bit more access for those players that are restricted to just that one type of plastic. Having more options is a good thing in that sense. But when you talk about an open bag player, then it can get a little bit overwhelming. Another thing that was funny, just real quick before we go, is I was watching some of the Vegas coverage again, and your buddy Tristan is out there. He's a Trilogy guy, a Latitude guy. He's on the card with Ricky, and Rick's throwing a Firebird forehand, right? And then Tristan throws his Pioneer, and he's like, and I was like, Tristan's throwing Ricky's unreleased Firebird clone signature disc from Latitude, because the Pioneer was basically a Firebird clone that Latitude designed for Ricky right before he switched back to Innova. So, had he been on Latitude right now, his name would be on the Pioneer, and he'd be throwing those instead. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Wow, that's funny. Tristan's throwing harps and Pioneers and stuff, and then Ricky is throwing the Firebird and the Pig, and it's like, oh man, it's so funny how things change so quickly. Anyway, but I just thought that was funny. It's like Tristan's throwing Ricky's signature disc that's not Ricky's signature disc because he moved over to Innova, and Rick's just throwing the disc that disc was inspired from instead. It's just like, man, it's just a trip how things have changed. And
but yet create space for Tristan to get sponsored, and a guy that's 20 just turned 21.
Absolutely.
The other week, and now he has coverage, and plays really well at Vegas, and unfortunately somewhat derails what I would imagine would have been a really great season from him. But you need the big dog like Rick to go back to an original sponsor or get pulled away for more money or whatever it was. But because maybe Innova doesn't know who Tristan is because he's 20, but Latitude does, and has seen him on tour a couple times, and they take a chance on a young kid, and now he has an opportunity to go and travel for the year. So
right, it cool definitely opens up some opportunities for folks. The way things switch around, and it's definitely interesting how it all works out. All right, well, with that, we're going to let you guys go. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys have any suggestions for topics or questions for any of us, leave them in the comments down below. You can check me out, patreon.com/discgolfnerd, if you want to look into giving some financial support to an unemployed dude who loves to make YouTube videos for people. keep your head up, everybody. We're going to get through this thing together. We're going to figure it out, and we'll be back on the course before we know it. And if not, then it's been nice knowing you, and we'll see you around. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll check you all very soon. All right. Cheers.